Well, good evening, church family. I want to thank you for joining us for our Wednesday night prayer emphasis for our missionaries. Now, tonight, we're going to be hearing from the Vernoys, our missionaries to Paraguay. Clint will be sharing some really exciting things about what has been happening this last year, just as the boards did last week. But one of them is about a build team that came from America that literally got out on the last plane home to the United States before Paraguay closed its borders. So let's join his presentation now.
Well, good evening, Tri-County family. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. We're continuing through our series, News from the Field. I've heard back from a lot of you that you've really enjoyed these Wednesday night Zoom interviews with our missionaries. And I know that tonight's going to be no different. You're going to also enjoy the field report that we're going to hear tonight. This evening, we have with us Clint Vernoy, our missionary from Paraguay, and he and his wife are there ministering through this mess worldwide that has been COVID. And so I'm not going to take a lot of time to do a lot of introduction here. But again, I just want to thank you for being with us tonight. And at this time, I'm just going to go ahead and hand things over to Clint. And as I have in the past, possibly interject some things along the way, or at least come in at the end with some summary questions before I let you go. And then don't forget, gather your family around with you tonight to watch this. And then we give you that 2 to 3 minute window to you all to pray over these bullet points that we're provided for prayer and praise as a family. So again, Clint, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And just go ahead and take your time now to unpack your ministry and the things that you would like the family of Tri-County to know.
Okay, my name is Clint Vernoy. It's good to be here. We've been your missionary at Tri-County since 1985. And so we appreciate your support, faithful over the many years. We were in Venezuela for a lot of that, part of it in the jungle. Some of you would remember that. We've been here in Paraguay for about 12 years. We just got back from furlough in December, but God's been active during the ministry here. We started with a building project in the first part of the year. The church was established when we moved to this city almost 8 years ago. And we have since moved from place to place to place and rental. And then the Lord gave us a couple of pieces of property. And we were able to build this building, which you can see behind me is the auditorium. It's God's blessing to us. It was built during COVID. We had a group called CWE from Tampa, Florida, had 3 groups set up to come down to Paraguay during March. And so I was down here from January to March. My wife was in the States as we had started our furlough. And I came back here and they called me the week before, which was around March the 11th. They said, Clint, are you sure everything's okay? We can travel. I said, absolutely. There are no restrictions, no problems. Bring your group down. We'll build the building. It's no big deal. The day after they arrived, they announced that they were closing the airport and that Paraguay was shutting down. And so we had a group that, we had all the materials here. And what they did was in 4 days, they built all the walls. They put up the ceiling and the roof, the trusses, and it was all closed in. And they found out that the other 2 groups weren't going to be able to come. So they did the majority of the work in 4 days. Just working, 12-hour days trying to get it done. And then we got them out on the last plane that was a repatriation flight with the Peace Corps. And they had 16 seats left because their flights were all canceled. And the company said, we have no way to get you back home. You're on your own. And the Lord took care of it. They left the same day they were going to leave anyway. And then for the next 6 months, with a small crew, and my son-in-law is a civil engineer and he couldn't go to work either. The economy was shut down. And so he pretty much just came to church every day and we had the materials and they worked with the small group that we were allowed to. And in October, pretty much, they finished the auditorium. We added on some bathrooms to it. We were able to move out of our rented building to cease that cost. And the Lord just did a great thing all during the pandemic. And my wife and I were in the States. I was caught here for about 6 weeks after the group left. There were no flights out. And my wife was like, furlough's supposed to be together where we're together in the States. And I'm like, I'm going to get there, honey. I don't know if I'd have to get a canoe or something, but, there was a plane and I was able to get on it and fly to the States. And we spent the rest of our time there. We've tried to come back in July, but Paraguay was still closed. One of the things you have outside of every business down here still, it's mandatory masks in any building. You have to have, there's like portable sinks, and they usually make them out of a 55-gallon drum. They put a sink on the top, you run a hose to it, and you have a drain hose going out of it that just runs out, because they have to be able to wash their hands before they go into any public area. And so that's just one of the protocols. They come into church. We have to measure their temperature. If they have a fever, they can't stay at church. We have to register their name so that we know if somebody does come down with COVID, we know who is here during that time, that they can be checked also. So there's a lot of restrictions. A lot of the people still aren't coming back because it's not so much that there's a lot of COVID, but if you do have COVID in a serious case, there aren't the intensive care beds here. The government system here would collapse in a day if there was the kind of surge that you had in New York. It wouldn't last 2 weeks. They wouldn't be straight. It would just absolutely collapse. You have people, on the streets. So they're very careful. They're very tight, which means they've been able to handle it for the most part. So we feel pretty safe to run around and do all the different stuff. Our next project with the church is our auditorium is built on the back of the property, which is a square, and we're going to build we're going to prepare the foundation for a 2 to 3 story building wing that'll go out like in the shape of an L. Here, you can build the skeleton, which is the cement columns and the floors, and then you just fill in each room as you start to use it and finish it. There's no problems with occupancy permits and getting it done to a certain, there's no problem with that, because here, churches, you can't get a loan or a mortgage or anything like that. You have to do it with what you have as you go. And so if we can get the skeleton finished, and then we can, because right now we have no Sunday school rooms, we have no kitchen, we have no office. All we have is the auditorium and 2 bathrooms, which the bathrooms are really nice and the ladies are all happy about it. So, and so we're good to go, but there's more stuff to do with the people. We've been able to, we've got a lot of people on our online service. And then we also have the people that are coming in, just trying to encourage them to come back, because when we got back in December, they had only started having church like the middle of December, where you could actually have more than 10 people in a group. We can only have 50 to 70 people, depending on the size of your room, because you still have to space 6 feet apart. So there's a lot of regulations. They're not like watching you. They're not coming and inspecting. But if someone did report you, then that would close us down. And so we have to just be very careful. And because we don't want them to shut us down after all this time that we're finally here. And it's been good. God's kept the people together. We're bringing it back and it's almost like we're starting all over again. But we've got the core group that just stayed faithful through the entire time. So.
Good. Let me ask you this. You talked about, again, it's pretty amazing what God did in reference to, the building. I mean, to be able to have that kind of forward movement during a time when you wouldn't think you would get forward movement is an incredible blessing. And then not only having that done, but then just how God moved people back to where they needed to be was fantastic. What are some of the things that you're looking forward to accomplishing, not just with the building or as well as the building, but in ministry when it comes to the aspect of and again, I've been telling all of our missionaries, I know that you're like us. We can only make plans, but depending upon what COVID does and what the government does, it has a heavy bearing on what we can and cannot do. And so maybe a little bit in a perfect world sense, but not maybe even in a perfect world sense. What are some of the things that you're looking to accomplish with the church, with leadership, things such as that into this year? And what does that look like? How do you hope to accomplish that?
Okay. Well, first, I'd say the priority is the leadership training. We have a good set of men and families, and we want to. There's two guys that had actually been to Bible Institute, done a couple of years, one in Brazil and one in Chile. We have some other guys that have been serving faithfully in another church where they were in partial leadership, and they haven't got any training. There's no place to train someone here. And so I have a YouTube channel I've started that we'll be using that to train men that can't be here, and they can hear the recordings of it, but then also bring some of those men together and start like a Bible Institute to train them and get them doing the different activities in the church. Right now, we can't have, like Sunday schools. We can't use Sunday schools. They can't have the children gathering like that. That's still prohibited. But the young people can start to gather in the smaller groups. And we actually, during our furlough, lost our youth guy that had been here, went through some marital problems and left the church. And it was really devastating to us because we were on furlough. But one of the great blessings is he found me last week and said, I want to come back and I want to apologize and I want to start again. And he was one of the leaders, but he was always needing to be trained, but he just wanted to serve. All he really wanted to do was serve. And so having him come back in repentance and asking forgiveness and seeking to rejoin the church, I mean, as a pastor, you know how often that is very rare. It was a blessing to me and encouraged me as the church pulled in together. They, the people that had been hurt by that also forgave and went to him. And training leadership is our big goal. Now that we have a building, we also want to try, and we got to figure out the way to do it. But pretty much we've got all the materials and printed materials and stuff that we can just go around and visit this area and start bringing people in. For the longest time, we had a building that was like, our auditorium was 10 foot by 12 foot. And so we were pretty much full all the time. We couldn't really invite anybody because they just come look at the door and go, no way, And so now we have the space, but now we got to go with the COVID that says, oh no, don't get in with a whole bunch of people you don't know. And so it's just one of those things where getting the people to realize that they can trust God for this part of their life too, and not just a mask or a piece of paper on their face. This city we have our cases, but it's not really bad in the sense that it's not like totally communal and going through the place. So you just have to be cautious. You have to be careful. You have to follow the protocols. With the YouTube channel, the people that are still like, you know what, I'm coming back when I have a vaccine. It's like, okay, well, here's the YouTube, study with us, send your questions in, we'll work at it. And then the other men, we'll be starting that group and having them come. And then the other thing is, the building and having a place, because right now we don't even have a nursery. So last Sunday, one of the men that was online said, so who was that baby that was making the noise? And I'm like, okay, all right, we got to do something, but there's nothing we can do because it's all just one auditorium. But that biggest thing is getting the leadership and training them, because that's the future of the church.
Very good. Let's do this. And you've kind of already obviously mentioned, you've mentioned some obvious ones, but for the sake of helping our people kind of bullet point those in their heads, and for the individual who's actually going to be editing this recording and putting it up on the screen for us, can you give us 3 or 4 praises, and then give us 3 or 4 prayer requests that can help us again, be praying for you in a very specific way in the future. So give us maybe 3 or 4 praises.
Okay. One, the building was built during a pandemic when nothing was supposed to be happening, and God took care of that. 2, our core group stayed unified, stayed together, stayed in contact through a thing called WhatsApp that's real popular in Latin America. So we had groups where they were always checking in on each other. I was able to preach from the States. And so that was able to just keep the group together. I can say that we didn't lose anybody once we stopped meeting, which was back in March. We had not had in-present church from March 15th of 2019 until January, the first Sunday of January. That was our first church service. And all those people are still here. They're not all coming at once, but we have them on the internet and we have them in church. So that's a huge praise for me, because I wasn't here. There was no, pastoral counseling or leadership here, but they took care of each other and they pulled together. And so, man, that's an awesome praise for me, because I know the church is Christ. It's not leaning on me so much. It's Christ's church and he took care of it. Second praise is, or third praise. Let's see. My wife being back here, my wife, as I spoke to you earlier, she has been diagnosed with PTSD. On our prayer letters, we've been openly talking about that. Furlough was necessary for her to have time away. This city, because of kidnapping with our son-in-law, who returned to us alive, which was a miracle, that was very affecting on her from things that had happened to us through our ministry back in Venezuela. And it made her just not be able to function here. After going through therapy there and coming back, things have changed, and she's doing well. And I just praise God for that, because we really didn't know how she would affect with coming back into the same situation where we had been. But that time with COVID and having to be on furlough, that was custom made for her to have the time to heal. Fourth praise, some new families and some new men coming to the church. And that, it's like God brought them here, and it's like he's brought some new men and new blood to the team. And so we're praising God for them, because you didn't know that we expected to lose people through this whole time, and we've actually gained new people. And so I would say those are the four big praises.
Good. Can you give us about just 3 or 4 prayer requests really quick, and then I'll work to kind of wrap all of this up for us.
Okay. Prayer requests would be just wisdom on how to just bring more people into the church, as far as seeing spiritual growth from a distance. One of the things that I'm finding out now that I'm back here, I felt in the States that I was so far away. What can I do? Well, now, even though I'm here, I still feel like, I'm hardly seeing my people. A lot of them don't want visits because of COVID. And, but there are a lot of needs in the church with jobs being lost. We had one of our main men lost the job just last weekend. And making sure the church learns to walk with God without that, that congregating on Sunday and being together. We've been able to do well so far, but it's just like, it seems like the emphasis needs to be on their own individual personal walk. They can't lean on, I'll be with the people on Sunday and that'll encourage me to keep going. They have to learn to lean on God personally, themselves, where they are in their house and stuff. And as a pastor, being able to get them to take those steps of growth would be my biggest prayer for the people, and trying to reach new people in the midst of this, where you really don't want to meet new people. You want to stay in the core that you've got, and helping us, the Lord to help us to see who has the needs where they will be willing to seek out Christ and seek out the church, and not be so afraid of the whole COVID thing, because their need is greater than their fear.
Well, I tell you what, I really appreciate that. And again, thank you for joining us tonight and giving us your time. Just want to speak to our Tri-County family now just very quickly. Remember to stay tuned here. We're going to transition into about a 2 or 3 minute prayer time. You'll see a couple of slides come up on the YouTube, and those will provide you the praises, and then it'll switch over to the prayer requests, and then I'll come back for some final remarks. But again, church family and Clint, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You all have a blessed, blessed evening. Again, hang on, church family. I'll be back with us in just a moment to give us a wrap.
Again, thank you for being with us for these series presentations, News from the Field. We pray and hope that you'll join us next week as we come with another missionary presentation. And so from all of us here at church, you have a blessed evening.